let's talk about what your upgrade strategy might look like. So we're going to go over a couple of different guidelines as to some of the things that you should be considering as you're planning your upgrade. So starting off, like with most companies who are developing some custom code, most likely you're going to be responsible for it. Regardless of how it came to you, you're going to have some custom code. You're going to have to deal with it in one way or another. And so with that custom code, right, there's a couple of things we need to consider. Along with our custom code, we're going to have a bunch of data over in the database. So between those two things, one of the things that you'll need to account for is planning for a code freeze and planning for a data freeze. Let's talk about those two things. Starting off with the code freeze, first and foremost, right, we want to designate a specific time where any new changes are going to be put on hold. Any changes to our custom applications or plugins are going to have to wait. So before we do that, we're going to want to make sure that anything critical, anything that has to go into our application is going to be placed there before actually going through the code freeze. That way, any sort of big changes are going to be integrated into the upgrade rather than having to double up the work, upgrade, and then integrate that change into the upgrade. That could cause a lot of unnecessary processes behind the scenes. So before going through your code freeze, right, just make sure anything critical is going to be done before the upgrade, and anything that doesn't need to be done, right, just make sure that that's still accounted for and taken care of a little bit later. Next up is going to be our data. So over in the database, this is a very important part because their database is constantly changing, right? And so we're going to need to make sure that we've first off allocated a lot of time to the database upgrade, since our database can be very, very large, right? On top of that, we're going to want to make sure that we have a specific point in time set in place to ensure that no new data is going to be integrated, right? Otherwise, again, it's going to be doubling up the work as we go through and have to upgrade the data twice, right? And so with this, as you go through, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing frequent tests. You go through each one of your environments to ensure that the database upgrade is successful, right? This is probably the most crucial part of the upgrade. So again, make sure you allocate a good amount of time for it and spend a lot of time to make sure that this goes as smooth as can be. All right, so we have these two ideas in mind. Next up is how do we upgrade with production in mind? Obviously, there may or may not be downtime depending on how we want to do this. So we're going to be accounting for upgrading production with downtime and upgrading production without downtime. So first and foremost is, can we have downtime at all, right? Do we have applications within Liferay that are driven by users? So do you have a message board that's fairly active, or maybe your users are going to be creating blog posts, or any number of things that cause users to have to create things and have those things stored behind the scenes? Along with that, do we have the resources to run multiple environments? Can we stand up multiple instances of Liferay so that if traffic is coming in, right, we can direct users to that specific server or environment as we work on something behind the scenes in our other quote unquote production environment? So those are going to be your two sort of deciding factors as to whether or not you're going to be allowing for downtime. Obviously, if users aren't doing anything in the site but just kind of checking it out, then maybe a little bit of downtime is okay, right? If you have multiple servers or environments that can pick up the load, then you may not need to account for downtime. But if you don't have that luxury, then downtime might be a necessity. So as we go through the upgrade process, what does it look like when we incorporate downtime? So first and foremost, we're going to want to make sure our production server or production environment is going to be pointing at our production database, right? The one that we spent a lot of time working with. Again, that database is going to be sort of the core or the nucleus of your upgrade process. Everything is going to revolve around it. So that's first and foremost. From there, we shut down Liferay, hits that downtime. We then go through the upgrade process of our database. We then have the upgrade process complete. We then start Liferay back up and test it out. By then, right, you should have a very good idea of whether or not this is going to work. You would have gone through your multiple iterations to ensure that in places like dev, UAT, and so on, that this process is going to work. What if we don't want downtime, right? So first off, we're going to make a clone of our Liferay environment. So carbon copy, or a one-to-one copy as much as we can, right? So we have one that's production and the other is a clone of production. So with our clone, right, is where we're going to run our upgrade process, right? Go through it. Everyone is still being pointed to the original production environment, so to speak. Once that upgrade is complete, you're then going to migrate some users over to the completed, upgraded, cloned environment. Just test it out a little bit, make sure that the users that are there are having a good experience, making sure that you've gone through your various tests as well to ensure that the upgrade process was successful. Once everything looks good, you can then start sending everyone back over to that now production ready environment that was cloned from the original. All in all, again, there's going to be a couple things that you're going to need to keep in mind as you're going through your upgrade strategy. And the big ones are plan a code freeze, right? You're going to want to make sure that anything critical is accounted for. You don't want to double up work. So you're going to want to have all of your meetings, check out your backlogs, plan your code freeze. Next, plan your data freeze, right? The upgrade process of the database is very intensive. So you want to make a hard cutoff so that you incorporate all of the data that you need and bring it over into the upgrade world. Finally, last but not least, right, you're going to have to plan what this process is going to look like, the upgrade process, over in production, right? Are you going to account for downtime? Are you going to sort of do a switcheroo, right? Have production, clone it, upgrade it, and then point your users to the upgraded server. Whatever your strategy is, again, keep these three things in mind. I hope this helps you with your future upgrade plans and strategies. So I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.